You should be patting Josh Jacobs on the back too, because that guy is a workhorse, dude. I have so much respect for the way he plays the game. But I think overall, there's going to be some people that possibly overlook Detroit this year. But I think they're going to live and die with the quarterback play and with the performance of these guys inside. Last but not least, certainly not least, because I think this team's going to make a jump. Of course, we're talking about the Chicago Bears. Welcome to the Green Light Podcast presented by BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code GREENLIGHT and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code GREENLIGHT. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. If that bet loses, you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Just make sure you use bonus code GREENLIGHT when you sign up. Welcome to the show. On today's podcast, we're going to be talking about the NFC North, okay? We'll be talking about the NFC North. It's one of the deepest divisions in football. It's potentially one of the best divisions in football. Last year, it was one of the most exciting divisions in football. It took till, late December to decide the thing. There were teams that had like the season of their lives and didn't win the division. Like the Vikings got to feel like shit not winning that division last year. But it runs through Detroit, and we'll be there next week. Next week. I'm going to be sitting down with Dan the Man Campbell. I kind of want to arm wrestle Dan Campbell. I feel like my shoulder's teetering on needing surgery, and I would love for Dan Campbell to be the one to put it over the edge. I think my shoulder is fucked up from when I went to Tuscaloosa 2 falls ago and arm wrestled that giant guy from Alabama that called me out in Gillettes.
Well, you won. You won that arm wrestle thing, so screw your arm feeling bad now. You won.
I did win, but do you remember that?
Yeah.
I was in there. Dude, that arm wrestling contest had to go for 6 minutes. At some point, and I just remember that Shane Gillis was there, and he was probably like, what is wrong with this fucking guy? If we ever get Shane Gillis on the show, I'm going to be like, do you remember when I got into a 7-minute arm wrestling match with some local guy from Tuscaloosa? You couldn't turn it down, dude. I felt like my manhood was on the line. And I'm going to do the same thing to Dan Campbell next week. He's
Why not just actually wrestle? Why arm wrestle? Just actually wrestle.
I don't think I want to wrestle. I don't think I'm like 257 right now. I think Dan Campbell's about 280. But speaking of coaches that are like they're into the hand-to-hand combat, Mike Vrabel, was that fight number 2 that he was in the middle of?
Yep. Just jumping in there, no regard. Just jumping in there, getting dudes off the pile. And no, he doesn't have a helmet. He didn't have any pads. He's just ripping it.
Guy's unbelievable.
Loves the scrum.
He loves the scrum. Seriously, I mean, that's got to energize the team. I kind of wonder, that tells you that Robert Kraft didn't have a talk with him after the first one.
Right.
And this one we had a better camera angle on. So
yeah, we actually had some footage of it, and it's funny. You like Robert Kraft was probably like, "Oh shoot, I meant to talk to him about that. Oops.
Oh, fuck. Well, here he goes again. We'll make sure it doesn't happen a third time. But when we were down in Atlanta at Falcons practice last week, we were standing in front of the hill where all the fans were, and we were in the media section, and I heard a couple people get yelled at about, "Hey, no videos." And I turned to Nolan and I was like, no videos. You're at training camp. How are you going to get these people who traveled probably hours to be here to see their favorite team practice not to take videos? How are you going to enforce that? There's a couple hundred people on the hill. And then I hear Michael Penix got in a fight, and we don't have any footage of it in joint practice, which is you're supposed to, with Cam Newton, we had a still shot of him putting Josh Norman in a headlock. We had an AP photo. In Spartanburg, South Carolina. And down in Atlanta, they got that shit like Area 51. We didn't see. And then the funniest thing was afterwards, they were like, "Hey, Michael, how do you feel about getting in a fight?" And he was like, "Well, I'm from Tampa." And everybody's like, Tampa, like the division rivals, and then he had to be like Dade City, and with all due respect to Tampa and Dade City, I just didn't know it was like that. I didn't know. When I think of Tampa, I think about like pirate themed restaurants and fucking harbors and strip clubs, Ybor City. Maybe that's the next stop for us. Steaks. Yeah, that's true.
Michael Penix Jr. speaks on the fight, says he threw a deep ball to Ray McLeod and celebrated. They had a lot of word on practice, so I gave them some word.
Yeah, just a little word, just a healthy bit of word. Here's the thing. When my quarterback gets in a fight, like, I'm okay seeing that once max. Like, one time's enough. I'm happy he made it out unscathed, but that left hand is kind of like the key to our entire season. And football fights are ultimately one of the dumbest things in the world because a lot of guys punch helmets.
It was like the remember the Josh Allen clip from a couple camps ago when he was tying up with somebody. It was like, fuck yeah, but it was like, not again.
Take it easy, Josh. Take it easy, Josh. So we got fights, man. We got there's practice fights left and right. I think there was a fight in like Bengals practice because Shamar Stewart looped inside and kind of got pushed or fell. He was a little out of control. He's a little close to the entire franchise. Can you imagine if Shamar Stewart, who like held out for all that money and made their lives hell, then like just nuked to the quarterback, just kamikaze Joe Burrow, dude, just Tom Brady'd him,
Well, that video, fortunately, they pan away. The way it kind of starts and they're going in slow motion and his body angle.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No, dude. So, yeah. Training camp fights. I don't miss them. Although they were always funny to watch back on film because we used to be like, it was like litigating who was not interested in at least getting in the scrum. Like if you're in a defensive line room, everybody's got to be in there. But then, of course, like if an undrafted guy started fighting, we would stand back there with our arms crossed. Like, well, he hasn't been here long enough. But if we were in a fight, we'd be like, hey, y'all motherfuckers need to get out here,
Yeah.
Anyways, it's enough about fights. Yesterday, I get online, which I do from time to time, and I see Taylor Swift's trending. I would never know why, and that's no disrespect, but I just don't know. I don't follow pop culture, and I know she's like on the New Heights podcast, which probably blew up. I think it had 1.2 million views at one point.
1.3 million concurrent, the most in YouTube history.
Golly, that's incredible. You mean the Raheem Morris interview might not catch Taylor Swift?
It's on its way.
All right. Yeah. And so how long would I have to live to see the Raheem Morris interview catch Taylor Swift? All right. So I'm like, and there's people that they don't even want me to say Taylor Swift's name because it's like there's this visceral reaction. She like challenges some guy's manhood somehow. Like even a thought, like just throws him into a pretzel. I'm not some Swiftie, but Taylor Swift's got some pull when the entire internet is obsessing over the number 12, and I have no fucking idea why the number 12 is trending. I guess she's got her 12th album coming out. Every hockey team's got like every social department like knew what time it was. They were like, hey, free clicks. Let's just like relate some sort of post about hockey to Taylor Swift. So I'm confused, right? Here's the most important number 12 that I saw in the NFL landscape was that James Cook got paid, and it's 48 over 4 years, which if you divide 48 by 4, that's approximately $12 million a year. So there's something to this numerology thing that Jason Kelsey was talking about. And so I'll start there. I look forward to the Taylor Swift album. I'm going to give it a spin. Oh, dude, actually there's an album I'm really excited about at Cowboy Reed is the Mac DeMarco album.
Oh, yeah, Mac DeMarco, dude, freaking out the neighborhood. He's vibing. So
under a week for that. Okay, so we're talking about James Cook. James Cook, as we said, they'd get it done. Reps wanted like 15 mil. They settle for less than that. It's essentially a front-loaded deal where you get 30 mil over 2 years. It's a good deal for James Cook. It's a good deal for the Bills. I think this is one of the deals where everybody's happy. I remember his first NFL carry. I think he fumbled the football. So he's come a long way. And he's really important to them. He really is. They have not paid running backs traditionally in Buffalo over this spell. And, you went Singletary to Moss, and now finally you found somebody who's like a perennial 1,000-yard rusher. And it certainly helps being the running back in an offense that has a QB run threat that's that significant. But I think he's done a lot in his own right, and you could argue that Buffalo's really lucky to have him. And so that's what this reflects. This is the most money they've committed to anybody in the backfield in a long time. I'm sure ever, considering where running back contracts are now, even though we had to get over that hump of we don't pay running backs anymore. You kind of sneak this deal in there. There was one season where Josh Allen led the team in rushing. His rookie year, I think he led the team in rushing. But Cook over the last couple of years has really facilitated the scheme change and the change in personality on this offense. McDermott made no bones about it. He wanted to see more run game, more balance, put less on Josh Allen. Josh Allen could put the cape on, but do we need him to put the cape on the entire game? And when Dorsey got fired mid-season, it was kind of a shock to people. As bad as Buffalo was playing, it was just a rough deal. And Josh's turnovers went down, and they became a running football team. Not necessarily first, but they play balanced football. And if you remember games like the Dallas game when Dallas went up to Buffalo, when you have a big, strong quarterback like that who's going to tuck the ball and run it, sometimes he's going to play physical. We all know we hold our breath collectively when Josh Allen tiptoes down the sideline or lowers his shoulder, on a weekly basis. Sometimes you're going to get dinged. And, not to mention just having a good rushing attack. But in situations like that, shit, you can win throwing the ball 17 times a game. That's how good they've gotten up front and in the backfield. And Aaron Cromer has a lot to do with that, right? But so does James Cook. And so it's no coincidence, I don't think, that Joe Brady takes over, and in the last couple years, they've just completely flipped the script, and James Cook has helped them do that. So, he cried at signing. Like, there were real tears there. And I think what people don't understand is, and it makes sense when you look at these guys' contracts, and hey, they're all lucky. Everybody in the NFL is lucky. It's you're playing a kid's game and you're making a king's ransom. But guys on rookie deals, you might get drafted and that might be a dream. But for that dream to be a reality the rest of your life, you got to get that first deal, that first big deal. And this is what that moment is to a guy like James Cook. And a lot of people might be like, hey, well, why would you be so emotional? I don't know why anybody would say that. Actually, it's $48 million fucking dollars. However, the contract actually reads in fine print. It's like it's like winning a couple lottos, right? So it is an emotional thing for him, but this is the thing that's going to change his life forever. And if you're a running back and you're 25 years old, this could be it. And I think he understands the gravity of that situation. You're talking about a guy who's earned around $4 million on his rookie deal. There was no guarantee that Buffalo wouldn't say, hey, we'll just make you play and we'll play chicken on this thing and then we'll tag you. Tough shit. Like, we got Josh Allen. But I think it's equal parts appreciation, Brandon Beane doing things the right way, and also recognizing this guy is a differentiating factor for them. He's a good back. He really is. And now he's rich. And, not for nothing, I mean, you got to consider the pressure that this guy kind of has come up with, having an older brother in the NFL in Dalvin Cook, who was a stud for a very long time. And these James Cook years were not concurrent with that. So you kind of are watching your older brother play, and, you're always Dalvin Cook's brother. Like I was Howie Long's son, and then my brother was Chris Long's brother, and now I'm, Kyle Long's brother, the guy on CBS, and I'm sitting here doing content out of my fucking home studio. So That's the James Cook that's the James Cook news, and I think it's good news for Buffalo fans because he's very central to what they're going to try to do. And over the next couple of years, you're gonna see a heavy dose of James Cook because burn the ships. The window's as open as it needs to be for this franchise, and the rushing balance that he brings is really good. So, anyways, we're going to talk about the NFC North today. That's an AFC East, headline, and we'll get there next week probably at some point. So when you talk about the NFC North as a whole, the outcomes are pretty variable, in my opinion. I mean, obviously, the odds-on favorite is Detroit, and they've earned the right to say, hey, this division runs through Detroit. Anytime you win a division twice in a row, that's big. But just as we talked about with the Eagles, like when you win the Super Bowl, you hear those guys talk about it. It's like, what does this team need to do that it didn't do last year or that it did last year, what have you? Like, those guys have been quick to point out that you can't bridge a gap between two teams. Like, it's a brand new season. Nothing that Detroit's team did last year makes a shit. They're 0-0 in division. They're 0-0 this year. So while the road might run through Detroit, I'm pretty sure there are teams in Chicago and Minnesota and Green Bay that think, hey, we're this close. And they're right. Like, in a lot of ways, they're right. Like, Detroit can't relax. No team in the NFL can relax, but Detroit especially can't relax in this division because it came down to the wire last year. And because you've got Green Bay, who's probably thinking, hey, last year, Jordan Love was dinged, and he didn't play well. What if he puts it together? We got the defense stabilized. If you're Chicago, you're thinking it couldn't get any worse. We'll talk about that in a little bit. There were some real lows for that team last year. And we've got a quarterback who we feel pretty bullish about. And then Minnesota's like, hey, we've been right there, and we've never had a long-term answer at quarterback. And now I think we're committing to this long-term answer. We've liked the bits and pieces of what we've seen from J.J. McCarthy, albeit a small sample size because of injuries. So there are teams in this division think they can win it. This isn't one of those divisions where half the division is going to be, making plans for Cancun way ahead of time. Like, it's not that kind of, or Mykonos, as Dr. Fax would say. It's not one of those situations. This division is 4 deep of tough outs. I believe that this year. And I don't want to start the preview talking about the Bears, but I think there's one guy and one relationship in Chicago that can swing the whole thing. I think you know what relationship that is. If you can fix the guy in Chicago, their ceiling, I think, is as high as anybody in the division in the future because of the tools that he possesses. So let's talk about the Lions because we should talk about them first. The Detroit Lions last year, if I was, Dan Campbell's buddy and I'd watch him come up through the ranks, like say I'm a college roommate or something, and I'm watching him at the end of the season, if we had a phone call, I'd say, man, I'm really proud of you. Like, I'm just really proud of you. I'm proud of the way your team played. They lost 6 starters on defense to IR. They lost multiple depth pieces. It felt like everything went wrong. It felt like at the end of the season they were pulling guys off the street to play. And, that's what building a culture of toughness and resilience, I can't remember which word it is. Dan Campbell probably doesn't know the difference, right? I mean, which one is it? Resilience? Is that on the wall somewhere in Detroit?
Resilience being the more frequent and generally preferred option.
Coach Campbell would say grit is his word.
Grit is what he'd say. Resilience is
that many
syllables. It's an uppity word. Campbell's going to keep it simple, and he's going to say grit. But that's what a culture of grit, instills in your team. When the chips are down, you're still going to be fighting. You're still going to compete. You're still going to scratch and claw and find a way. And in a lot of situations, and what it demanded at times was scoring 30 points a game. In a lot of situations, they made it happen, but they ran into a buzzsaw in Washington. And that was just a bad matchup. And I honestly think they kind of, they got caught a little bit flat-footed in that game. And so the attrition, we talked about that, losing starters, IR, depth, depth wasn't there. Defensively, they had to kind of duct tape it together. And I thought Aaron Glenn did a good job considering in some situations. That's why he's got a head coaching job right now. It's a whole body of work, but I think also, they were getting guys that, as I said, when I say off the street, I mean guys that just kind of flew into Detroit and got their playbook over the last couple of days. He was getting guys ready to play. They had to be really aggressive. They didn't have much pass rush. They had to go to like Zadarius Smith last year, who played really well, who could be back. Obviously, The biggest loss was Hutchinson, who was on an all-world tear before he went out. I mean, a ton of pressures. I think I heard that he still led the team in pressures at one point late in the season, and he only played in 5 games. So he was on a tear. But I think overall, there's going to be some people that possibly overlook Detroit this year, if that's possible, right? And I think when the window's open for a couple of years and you get close and you don't win, people kind of write you off a little bit. And then you hear the reports out of the Miami and Detroit joint practice that Detroit ate their lunch. Like, it was like watching a predation. Like, it was like watching a bully at the schoolyard, from what I've read and from what I've heard. Like, they actually had a guy say on the Detroit Lions, "I'm not sure they practice how we practice." For him to say that out loud and not be a premier player on the team, like he's a core teamer, to say that, like I think the undertone is that Detroit's a lot tougher than some of these teams, namely Miami. And that to me is just a reminder of what they've built. And you come back to grit, you come back to culture, and that's gonna keep your floor high. And that's what we saw late last year, is they were able to compete in some of these games. Sometimes they got outscored, like against Buffalo. And it makes for a great football game on TV. But if you're a Detroit fan, you're probably losing your mind. So we'll see if they got the staying power. I think they do. We'll see if their culture holds up, replacing 2 coordinators. That's the biggest defining, if you're to look at Detroit and say, hey, what might keep them from winning the division? Well, there's a couple things. It could be the ascension of some other teams, but it could certainly be like a Philly situation from a couple years ago, when they had to replace 2 coordinators. They came out limping, and they just didn't really they just really didn't find their stride. So we'll see if it's a situation like that. John Morton's going to be under a lot of pressure, right? He's got the tools offensively, and that's why. I mean, there is one thing offensively, and John Morton, of course, a new offensive coordinator. He knows Ben Johnson. He knows Jared Goff. So that's a good thing. It's kind of homegrown talent. He's probably an extension of Ben Johnson. We'll see what the wrinkles are. I think the question is twofold. Can Jared Goff thrive without like one of these gurus? And I tend to think yes. And I also tend to think, hey, is it the offensive line that they've had over the couple of years that makes the guru, or is it the guru that makes the offensive line? So often we try to assign blame when there's something wrong, and we try to give everybody the credit when something's right in the NFL. And I think sometimes it's the perfect storm, right? And so we can't discount the quality play that Jared Goff's had now in 2 spots, right? They left him for dead in LA, and then now famously he's good enough for Detroit, right? You get chills thinking about that stuff. The second question I have is, can the interior offensive line hold up? Which is, I think, a lot more of a concern for me than a new offensive coordinator. And I might be naive, and maybe this all works out because they are so well coached up front with Hank Fraley, and having a cornerstone of your franchise like a Penei Sewell, who is like, a little bit of the way Trent Williams is such a big deal in run and pass, but even more so in the run game, I would argue. In San Francisco, it's the same thing when you're trying to get on the second level and do things that you just can't do with other tackles. We marveled at times at some of the things they did last year with Sewell, like things you only see Sewell do in the run game. Having him is awesome. They're a great play action team. Will that continue? Probably. But, While you like Decker on the other side, he's a veteran player, 31. I don't think the ledge is near yet, but like you never know with older players. The thing you got to do is replace your all-world center in Ragnow, who's out slaying Muskie right now, I'm pretty sure. Like, he's fishing. He don't care. That's somebody else's problem, and it might be Graham Glasgow's problem. Are they going to move Graham Glasgow to center? They really like Tate Ratledge. I got to get these rookie names right. Tate Ratledge. An SEC boy. Tate Ratledge, actually very good in pass pro. When you look at the guy, like, he doesn't look like a pass protector. Google Tate Ratledge. Look at a picture of Tate Ratledge and tell me
that Kentucky waterfall. I'm no O-line guru, but that pretty much is everything I need to see.
I mean,
as far as running power goes.
Yeah, but supposedly he's a pretty good pass protector. They're going to need him to be. They're going to need Christian Mahogany to play big, because Jared Goff, as good as a quarterback he is, and I listen, we do these stupid ass quarterback hierarchy conversations all the time, myself included. I get sucked into them, right? But he's cemented himself as a top 10 quarterback. The track record and the staying power speaks to that. But under pressure, he is not a top 10 quarterback. And when you have pressure up the middle, especially on third down, he struggled at times. And so, that for me is the biggest question mark. When you get to these must pass downs where you can't go play action, where you can't muddy things up, where you can't, you don't have the threat of the run game, even though this offense does run trap on 3rd and 5, right? They'll keep you honest. We'll see if they still got the same trick plays. We'll see if they still got the same bells and whistles. I have a feeling they will. Can you just drop back and throw the ball without the middle of the pocket getting caved? We'll find out. That's something that nobody knows. We just don't know that until the bullets start flying and we see these guys playing together. I don't know the answer to that. So running backs are the best security blanket in football, Sonic and Knuckles, and they are truly a change of pace situation. Like, they are just it was like perfectly engineered for a change of pace situation. And I can't get enough of David Montgomery's his toughness. He's just the consummate fucking smash mouth running back. And I remember my brother talking about him when he was in Chicago, and he was like, man, wait until you see him get some burn on a more, and he wasn't dissing Chicago, but he was like in a more complete outfit. He's been incredible for them. Jahmyr Gibbs is a nightmare, a matchup nightmare. Remember when they drafted him, we laugh at some of the draft grades. When you look back at some of the draft grades, like, people were dunking on Brad Holmes. Well, they didn't just draft a running back. They drafted a damn Swiss Army knife. So you still have that. You're still going to have the run game. And what I love about the receivers is, now I don't know that Jamison Williams is like a dynamic blocker, but Amon-Ra St. Brown blocks his ass off. He does the dirty work. He does the work in the slot. He's a premier slot guy in today's NFL. He's this generation's, I don't know, I'm not putting him up there with Hines Ward yet, but like, he's that guy. Like, he's your tough ass wide receiver who's going to do the work in the slot. Everybody knows that. Sam Laporta is a hell of a tight end. I really like Sam Laporta. Jamison Williams, this could be a big breakout year for him. That's kind of what I'm feeling like. And some people might say, hey, last year was kind of a breakout year for him, but like, I think there's even more in there. And this kid, Isaac Tesler, he's got to be one of the guys I'm most excited about in this division as far as rookies are concerned. He's going to block his ass off. He hustles his ass off. I mean, I already watched the Hall of Fame game tape. I watched Atlanta a little bit. This guy shows up in the frame when he's got nothing to do with the play. He's trying to block. He's trying to scrap. And I think if you can get him the ball with a full head of steam, he's going to be a tough guy to tackle at the second level of defense. I mean, he's a big kid. I actually look forward to seeing him in person. So I'm excited about the offense. John Morton's got to pick up the baton and go, right? And the interior offensive line guys are really the epicenter of like my concern, if I have a relative concern in Detroit offensively. Now the defense, Kelvin Shepard, former player, right? I mean, another former player on this staff, leaning into that. Now this year, if they can get Hutch back, if they can find a second pass rusher, I mean, Davenport is a player I've always liked. He's got to stay healthy. Aleem McNeil is going to be working his way back from injury. DJ Reader's not really a true pass rusher necessarily. They have more reinforcements they added through the draft, I think, on the interior defensive line, right? Noel?
Tyleek Williams out of Ohio State.
So while I think they're going to be physical up front, you got to find a Robin to Aiden's Batman. And you know, like being the Batman can be hard when you're the only one, when you're the only guy in a superhero outfit. You need a Robin. And I thought Zadarius Smith did a really nice job when he came in last year. And Zadarius Smith also gives you a lot of versatility. He can line up inside. He can line up off the ball as a spinner. He's good on the edge. Like, he's one of the more underrated rushers of our generation, in my opinion. Yep. And he looked fresh last year when he came in, although he looked a little different. He didn't have any hair coming out the back of his helmet. I was like, who is this fucking guy? He's pretty good. And he looked lean too. So, you know, and that's one of the ways that guys late in their careers try to keep their speed up and their twitchiness. They might drop weight a little bit. I'd be curious to see him in person if he does end up a Lion in the next week or two. I would love that for them because he looked good for them. But we talked about everybody they lost last year. I thought some guys had some really valuable on-the-job experience. And one of those guys was, I mean, Amik Robertson, who was famously really scrappy against the Vikings, namely Justin Jefferson. He kind of he's one of the bright spots in that secondary. I mean, the corners are DJ Reed and Terrion Arnold. Arnold's he's grabby. You got to worry about the penalties with this team. The corners are just fine. The safety room is really good. That's a strength. Kirby Joseph is a ball hawk. And a guy who'll thump you. And Branch is just a Swiss Army knife. He's a fantastic player. He's one of the most fun players to watch in the NFL, in my opinion, on the defensive side of the football, and he allows them to do a lot of things. So when you're hearing in camp that there's a Hutch rule that's being enacted where, you know, they don't shut the play down when Hutch runs by the quarterback after a win in pass rush, that's how often they've had to blow it dead because Hutch beats somebody up front. Like, that's a good sign. That means he's trending in the right direction, and hopefully he comes out looking just like he did last year. I think when it comes to this defense, we didn't even mention the linebackers, who I really, really like. They got Jack Campbell. They got Anzalone. Anzalone's been awesome in coverage. I mean, another guy from that famous New Orleans draft class that we talked about. This guy has made a real career for himself. And I think Campbell's a dog. I like Jack Campbell. So really the defense, if they stay healthy, they're going to have some questions outside. But from time to time, you might not like the matchup or Arnold might get grabby. But overall, like, this team's going to be, if they can schematically hold up their end of the bargain, the new coordinators, they'll be right back in this thing. And so I'm excited to see the Lions play again. They're always fun to watch. And as you can see, hearing about the Miami joint practice, the culture is fucking intact. They still like bullying people. They still like fistfights. So those are your lead dogs in the division, the Detroit Lions, until the lead cats, until somebody else dethrones them. And that's 2 years running now that they've owned the division. So the number 2 team in the division, the Vikings, and this outcome is going to be pretty variable. You know, when I talk about this division like being hard to call, when a lot of it falls on the quarterback development and how quickly, you know, KOC can get JJ McCarthy up to speed, especially, I mean, like, he's had a year, right? While you're rehabbing, you have a year to take everything in, to watch film, to be with the guys, to see, you know, what Sam Darnold's doing and that sort of thing, and spend time in meeting rooms with the guys that you're going to take the field with next year. Like, that's not for nothing. And I think also with a bit of an injury history from him, like, you know, there was some, hey, the sky is falling, like, he doesn't look great in camp sort of things. Like, he hasn't had a couple year stretch of being able to just play football like consecutively over his career lately. I mean, the injuries, there were injuries to Michigan, injury last year. So I want to cut the kid some slack. And also, whenever I've seen him play preseason football, he's looked pretty good. Last year, he impressed me in preseason. Like I was excited about him. And then he got hurt. The MRI read came out like early in the next week, and we were like, oh shit. It wasn't a play where you knew he got hurt. And I remember thinking, hey, he might win this job. So just I want to give the kid some slack, let him get his feet under him. And honestly, watching that preseason game they played against the Texans, he did not look like he had happy feet. He didn't look afraid to be in the pocket. He was able to move. He rolled out to the right at one point and picked up a first down. He threw an absolute seed to Addison outside the numbers on the left side of the field with somebody falling at his legs. And so that's the stuff you want to see. Like we'll see when the bullets start flying, but that's the stuff you want to see. So I'm excited for J.J. McCarthy. You got to remember KOC's gotten Josh Dobbs ready to play, straight from the airport. And I think McCarthy, with respect to Josh Dobbs, has more tools and you're expecting more out of him. And he's been here now for the better part of, a year and a half, if you count all the time that he had to get mental reps last year. So total revamp up front. I think they came out of that Rams game and said never again. And I think they also want the physicality element in the run game. I love the Jordan Mason addition from San Francisco. Jordan Mason is a good back. He's a little bit more of a one-dimensional back, but you have the two dimensions with Aaron Jones. And I think also what you have with Aaron Jones is a guy who's older. And with running backs, you never know where the ledge is. So it's good to have two backs. It's good to have two backs anyways. They're a team that's going to run some 12. They're going to run some 21, especially early in the season because they've got an issue at wide receiver. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think they're going to live and die with the quarterback play and with the performance of these guys inside. They brought Fries and Ryan Kelly from Indy. And that's big. Like, two guys that played together, traveling together to Minnesota, you don't see that a lot. I think it's very interesting. A center and a guard whose jobs are to work in concert with each other, they're getting to work together at the new destination. I think that speeds the onboarding process up. They're veterans. They're going to help J.J. McCarthy. The concern I have, and it's so early to have a concern about anybody, I would echo these sentiments when it comes to quarterback play in the preseason, right? Like, it's fucking week one. I heard last week that Shedeur Sanders is going to the Hall of Fame. I watched the game, and I'm like, yeah, there's some really good moments. There's also some moments that are not so great. And the same goes for Jackson Dart, who I heard was like, oh, he was fantastic. There were some moments where I'm like, oh, rookie. It's same thing with Cam Ward. If you read the headlines, you don't watch the tape, you get suckered. So please take this with a grain of salt. But I do have concerns about Donovan Jackson, the rookie from Ohio State and pass pro. He could certainly develop into a fine player, and maybe his run game prowess is more than that of his pass blocking. But in the first preseason game, he was on the ground a little bit. He got baptized by Tim Settle. Tim Settle took him down to the river. And so, it's one of those things where when you're in your first preseason game, it feels like, I'll never forget my first preseason game. It felt like standing on a highway and watching semi-trucks whiz by. Just the speed of the game, the physicality is one thing, but the speed's crazy. And it might be one of those things where he just needs a couple weeks. You also have to remember in this day and age in the NFL, we spent a lot of time in underwear in August and less time developing the hog mollies up front in pads, man. So maybe he needs more time. But if I had, and this isn't me like shitting on the Vikings or saying that they're going to struggle or this kid's not going to be a good player, but there will be a learning curve. And it looks like in pass pro, it might be a little steeper than if it were a veteran player. So, he might work out and be awesome. But in the first preseason game, I'm like, okay, they're going to need to help him some, at least early in the season. And I also think early in the season, speaking of that, with Jordan Addison serving a 3-game suspension, you might want to lean on the run game. You might want to be in 12 personnel. You might see some CJ Ham, the hamster in there at fullback. I mean, they'll run near on your ass, man. Like they'll fucking, they're not just a finesse team, right? That they don't want to be. And with Oliver and obviously Hawkinson's their best pass catcher at tight end, they can get in 12 and still move the ball. And when Hawkinson's been out in the past, like they don't get as much out of 12 personnel because they're more one-dimensional. When you've got him on the field attached to the core, a couple things could happen. And so I think they're going to have to get creative, but as long as you got Justin Jefferson and Naylor who can really run, maybe less 3 wide receiver sets, although Ty Felton might get some work.
Hey, Ty Felton out of Stonebridge High School.
No shit.
Also, John Allen, as we learned this offseason, interviewing him. 2 Stonebridge, Virginia
guys.
Yeah,
got a couple Stonebridge guys. Minnesota. Wow, same team too. I remember when I was on the Eagles, Rashard Davis was from my hometown, but we didn't go to the same high school. That's crazy. That's really cool. So we got good tackles with this team. We got some concerns inside. You got the best receiver in football for my dollar, and a number 2 that's fantastic, but he's going to be sitting for 3 weeks. And I like the backs, man. The rookie quarterback has to play well, and if there's anybody I trust to get a rookie quarterback to play pretty well, it's KOC. Defensively, I'm going to go down this list, and you at home, Vikings fans, let me know where you see the problem. Okay. They had Jonathan Allen. They had Javon Hargrave, who not only are going to make them more physical, but they're going to be able to rush from certain alignments that are, they have a history of rushing the passer in this league. These are veterans. Phillips is a fixture there. He's kind of like their quarterback up front. Like, he really understands B-Flow's defense. He's a smart guy. He's going to be able to help with some of the, onboarding some of the new guys. They had trouble stopping the run last year, so they need to be physical. The edge guys, love them. Grenard, Van Ginkel, as fun. I'm not going to say the best edge duo. Maybe it is. I don't know. I could rank those another day. But one of the most fun ones to watch. I think Van Ginkel is the epitome of a football player. There's just certain guys who their instincts, you can't measure it. And I think that's why he's been so underrated and undervalued. And in Miami, he was making all types of plays, but in Minnesota, he's fully flourished. And Grenard, who was fantastic for them last year, he's one of my favorite rushers in the league. And then you got Cashman and Ivan Pace, who they've been in this system now. Cashman's a hell of a pickup for them last year. They really imported a couple goods from Houston that paid off. In Cashman and Grenard. And then also, let's get to the secondary. I love their safeties, Metellus, Smith. Metellus is like the guy that allows you to play all these crazy coverages and do all this stuff where it's hard to ID what your coverage is because he could be mugged up. I always use this example. It blows my mind. We talked about it on Inside the NFL last year. It was like this defense, they can give you a double mug look. 2 guys in the A-gap walked up and then bail out, and Metellus is playing like deep third. It's like he's that type of guy. You can play Tampa 2 with him. Yeah. So he gives them a lot of flexibility. Now let's talk about the corners, shall we? Byron Murphy, good player. Who is the second corner for them? Right. Who's going to win that job? And when B-Flow starts getting all fucking mad scientist out there and he's zeroing up and putting corners on an island, like that's a tough deal. So I'm just keeping it a buck, as they say. The corner room in Minnesota worries me a little bit. So, Hey, best case scenario, JJ's a hell of a player right off the bat. They weathered the storm the first 3 weeks. Addison's back on the field. Jordan Mason is a part of a big 1-2 punch that all of a sudden they're a power football team too, and the play action gets even more lethal. And let's say the pass rush is so good you don't really need to worry about the corners, and maybe one of the corners steps up. But like, there's a couple ifs here, right? There's a couple ifs. And I do think the Vikings are here to stay, but like there might be some growing pains. You also have to remember last year they played like so above expectation. Right? Like their win total was 7 or something, like 7.5 or 8. Like
won 14.
They won 14 fucking games, which speaks to the brilliance of KOC and I think the undervaluing of Sam Darnold. And I think it's a big assumption to think that every quarterback's going to play well under KOC. But if you're going to assume that about any guy in the league, I think he's got the track record where he can onboard young quarterbacks. So we'll see. And not to say he's had a bunch of draft picks, but what I mean by onboarding quarterbacks is like I've seen them play with 5-7 guys over the past couple of years, and at times they look the same depending on who's out there. I mean, they look the same. So that's a testament to the coaching staff. And I think B-Flow is one of the best D coordinators in the game. So coordinator-wise, these fucking guys kick ass. I got the utmost respect for this team. But there could be some growing pains. So let's get to the Packers, because I'll admit the Packers are a team that maybe the way they played at the end of the season or the halting of Jordan Love's kind of development, the sloppy play, like I got behind them last year in some situations and they burnt me. Like I was wrong in some of those games. I thought they'd win the last Minnesota game. I thought they'd split with Detroit or something. Like I thought they'd be pretty good last year, and they were pretty good. But to take the next step, they got to do some things. And I kind of came into this breakdown thinking, I just don't know. Like when you look at the defense on paper, like the personnel, you're like, oh, okay. Offensively, they got a ton of wide receivers, but do they have a number one? Like Golden's got to prove that. And Jordan Love, above all else, has to play well, right? But I want to start here. They've kind of talked me back into them a little bit the more I looked at it. And one of the great things they have going for them is their head coach. I think he's fantastic. I think Matt LaFleur is one of the best head coaches in the game. We talk about the Dobbs moment all the time. We've done it on this podcast where KOC got him ready to play. And he still had his clothes on from, flying in. Like probably he came straight to the stadium. That's something that got a lot of attention. I know we talked about Malik Willis having a spot start 2 weeks, but I thought that was incredible last year. I thought the way they played the run game, how efficient he was when they asked him to throw the ball. I think a lot of people forgot he got there 2 weeks before he started that first game,
right?
Or the second game of the season there. So you talk about having big hopes and dreams coming into a season with Jordan Love, who showed promise in 23, and you're thinking he's going to take that next step, right? The very first game in Brazil, it looks like his season's over. I was sure when Jalen Carter brought him down that something bad happened to his knee, and it did, but it wasn't the fatal blow we thought it was. And then the bad news is he had to play hurt most of the year. And I don't think it was just the knee. I think he had a few things going on. But above all else, this team has not won a big game in a calendar year. And that's what it's going to take. It's not just going to be winning one big game. It's going to be winning multiple big games this year if you want to win this division. They lost the Eagles off the bat. That's a big game, but it's the opener. Like you never know. I mean, how a team's going to play in week one. I mean, look at how the Eagles played week 2 against the Falcons, and then they became this juggernaut. So I'm not really counting that against them, but I'm counting it in the list of games that they probably had opportunities to say, hey, this is a signature win for us. They lost by 2 to the Vikings in September. I think in that game they started the game down like 28-7. So they didn't show up. They lost to the Lions by 10 in November. They started that game down 17-7, I think, or actually 17-3 in that game. They lost to Detroit again in December by 3, close game, but they start down 17-7. And then they lose to Minnesota late in the season in that big ball game where I kind of pushed all my chips on the table. I was like, hey, it's time, Packers fans. You're gonna win a game this weekend. And if you remember, that game was just a comedy of errors. And so it's these slow starts. It's the shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, like that last game against Minnesota, if you remember, they're on a great drive to start the game, and Josh Jacobs fumbles. Like they're not aggressive enough. They're kicking field goals in the low red. They got drops on fourth down. There was a sequence in this game that was unbelievable. Minnesota goes up 10-3 with 2 minutes to go, right? So you're supposed to get the ball back and be the last team with the ball. They give it back to Minnesota and allow Minnesota to drive, miss a field goal, but Edgerrin Cooper jumps off sides and Minnesota kicks again. Re-kick, dirtiest word in special teams. And, if you think about just all the stupid mistakes that this team made last year, it's a wonder they won as many games as they did. That's how talented I think they are in some spots. They hit the snooze button in these big games, man. Like they find themselves down and then they battle back. Like that first Minnesota game, they were down 3 touchdowns and they made it a game late in the game. But they cannot start slow this season. I mean, we're going to talk about some player performance issues and personnel, but like thematically, they gotta start faster this year. And I don't know what the answer to that is. And to me, that is a reflection on the head coach eventually. You got to get your team ready to play out the gate. And so let's start talking about Jordan Love. Like the things that I think he could do better. I think he needs to protect the football. That's not a think, I know, right? The back-breaking turnovers, avoiding those. Early in the year, a lot of the picks were in the middle of the field with him. And I thought he was a lot better in 2023. And so I don't know what was up with him. I talked about him being banged up. I want to give him that out because I really do believe he was beat up, into that wild card game. I think he was beat up. Remember the awful interception against the Rams where Byron Young's bearing down on him? He just kind of like throws the ball in the air and it's a pick six. Remember him in the Detroit game in the rain getting pressured and his answer was like just to lob the ball to Kirby Joseph, who's in the backfield. Like there were moments that are like meltdown level. And we joked last year that like the ghost of Brett Favre, the very worst version of Brett Favre, like commandeered Jordan Love's brain in those situations, dude. Like I don't know what happened in those moments, but the floor's got to get higher. The floor in his play has to get higher because I think the ceiling's really good. He's as impressive a fucking deep ball thrower as there is, certainly in the division, but almost around the league. Like, I mean, he's got a rocket on his shoulder. And I like his athleticism, his mobility. He does bake a cake back there. He'll get back to like 10 yards. He's a tall kid. He can see everything. He's just hopping around and biding his time. But when you do get pressure fast, he's got to have better answers. You have to have better answers, and the floor has to get higher. A lot of balls sailed on him last year. I don't know if y'all noticed that, but I noticed the balls sailing a lot. And to me, I wonder if that's a health issue. But the wide receivers didn't help him. Like that to me is like, that has to get better. It's really hard to play quarterback in this league. It's even harder when your wide receivers are top 5 in the league in drops. And, there were a lot of miscues and that sort of thing. This is a room that excites me. Like it just does. If Golden can turn into a real number one right off the bat, they've been looking for that clear number one. And that's no disrespect to Jaden Reed, who's a fantastic player. He's an incredible player. But when I think about a number one, I think about a different kind of skill set, and Reed is so valuable to them. He's like our Reed. He's so valuable. Everything he does for this offense here is huge. But he's the gadget guy. He's the jet sweep guy. He at times last year was your vertical threat when Christian Watson wasn't doing a good enough job. So like Jaden Reed's really important. He's got to get over that being unhappy, not being the number one. I remember there's some chatter after they drafted Golden where this room wasn't extremely excited about the addition. And I understand it's crowded. There's a lot of mouths to feed. But one of the things we talked about last year when we went to Green Bay's camp with these guys in person was like, how cool is it that like you got an everybody eats attitude? And they did. But They got to have that same attitude for the newcomer, because if he can eat, then there's going to be more food and you're going to be able to eat longer. You'll be eating in January. All right. This team's good enough to eat in January. So we talk about having one of the best route running tight ends in the league in Kraft. Romeo Doubs, who's my favorite receiver that maybe hasn't become elite, but in certain moments I'm like, damn, I can see it. Like, you know what I'm talking about. I'm just a Romeo Doubs guy. I've just been a Romeo Doubs guy since I overdrafted him on my fantasy team year one. I drafted him like in the 6th round and everybody was like, spit their drink out. And I was like, I don't know, man. He's going to be pretty good. And Dontavian Wicks, man, that's my dude. I love Wixie, but the drops, it almost got mental last year, right? And it can be a very mental position. So I hope the break in the offseason gave him a chance, gave all these guys a chance to kind of take a beat and put their, I don't even want to say ego because they're not ego guys, but like put the worrying about you aside and worry about the unit, because this golden kid could be special. That's kind of what they're thinking. And so if he can be that, and Christian Watson's still in the building, right? He's hurt right now, but Christian Watson, I've seen stranger things than him come back and make a huge catch for them. Like you just never know. And he could be trade bait at some point during the season if he gets healthy. I don't know when he's supposed to be back. Noel, do you?
No, that injury is pretty late in the year, so it'll probably be, I would think, mid-season, somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah.
So you either enjoy a rejuvenated Christian Watson who's fully healthy, or you put some good tape out there and maybe get something for him. I don't know what the trade market would be for Christian Watson, but the bottom line is this is a deep room. It really is. And I think the biggest domino that could fall is that Golden plays like a 1. And if he plays like a 1, I think Reed will be happy getting the matchups he's going to get. And everybody's gonna be better for it. So Josh Jacobs is a fucking workhorse. He got lost in the shuffle last year as far as like the Saquon movement, the Derrick Henry movement, the return on investment that's so good for the running back position at large. These guys were not just playing for themselves, but playing for all the running backs, right? All the running backs at home that are trying to earn. They're like, come on, Derrick. Come on, Saquon. Well, you should be patting Josh Jacobs on the back too, because that guy is a fucking workhorse, dude. I mean, I have so much respect for the way he plays the game, and he would be hell. When they say, hey, certain running backs wear you down, he's one of those guys. You can just tell as the game goes on, guys don't want to tackle him, especially if it's cold there. Not for nothing, the second half of their schedule is pretty brutal, and they play 3 of 4 of their last games on the road. So Josh Jacobs got to take his talents to warm weather. But when you do play him in Lambeau, that's a guy that's it's going to hurt. It is going to hurt. The offensive line, man, Zach Tom, starting with him, one of the best right tackles in the league. Obviously, there's only one Lane Johnson. There's only one Penei Sewell. But this guy in run and pass is pretty balanced and pretty reliable and underrated. And I think part of it is he wears the number 50, which is just like, that's like a serial killer move.
Yep.
But my man has played some good football and deserves the praise that he's gotten. And I think also, not for nothing, this offensive line has to protect a while. Like Jordan Love will bake a cake, like I talked about. And, the play action stuff, they got to be really tied in because they got a good play action attack with Josh Jacobs back there. Jordan Love seems to be comfortable turning his back to the defense. So Sean Ryan and Aaron Banks at guard. Aaron Banks, kind of some people scratching their head after the year that maybe he had in San Francisco. Like, is he worth that much money? I don't know. Elton Jenkins playing center. Rasheed Walker's probably the guy, but I'm sure they want somebody to push him at left tackle. And, you've got your Anthony Belton, second-round pick this year. And then Jordan Morgan, who had an injury last year. He's your first-round pick in 24. Like, the offensive line's in a decent spot. And I think one of the biggest things that you're going to be watching for if you're a Packers fan is, like, is Aaron Banks worth the contract? So offensively, if Jordan, again, big if Jordan Love was hurt last year and he comes out healthy and he makes a jump, because as long as he's been in the league, he really hasn't had like a long runway of experience. This offense could be fucking scary at times, I think, personally, when they're their best. But they got to start the games faster. That script has got to be better. They've got to prepare better. They have to come out with their hair on fire, man, because this offense has stumbled out of the gates in too many big games. The defense, this guy, Jeff Hafley, who came over from BC last year, they've been trying to figure this defense out over a couple years there, where if you're a Packers fan, it was like one of the most annoying things about your team was the way the defense performed. And I thought Jeff Hafley did a great job. And he's not a guy who blitzes. He's not a guy who's going to send the kitchen sink at you. This isn't a Detroit situation, right? He's actually one of the only coordinators in the division that doesn't seem to like to mash the pressure button or the zero button, or, so this is a little bit different of a defense. But when they blitz, they do it well. And I actually think Edgerrin Cooper is as big an addition to this defense as anybody, because when they do pressure, he has a real knack. He has a feel for slipping blocks, and he knows how to rush. The TFLs, the disruption, he's pretty impressive, man. I really like him. But he allows them to do what they do when they rarely do it at an efficient rate, along with Evan Williams and guys like that. Evan Williams being one of my favorite guys on this defense. But just talking about this defense, they gave up 22 points in Philly in the wild card. And 7 of them came from the damn special teams. The first play of the game, basically. You're on the road. You're getting ready to play the Monstars, and all you got to do is catch a kickoff, and they fumble the kickoff. And immediately, the defense got his back against the wall against a team that can just push their way into fucking end zone. That's not how you want to start on the road playing a team that's better than you objectively in the playoffs. And I was at that game. From that moment, I don't care how poorly the Eagles played, and they're lucky they didn't see Super Bowl Jalen Hurts. They saw wild card Jalen Hurts. That's a totally different deal, right? So, 22 points by the Eagles that day, and probably 15 of them are on the defense. Like, they rounded into form. And when you look at the roster, I don't think they're like it's a bunch of head turners on this defense. Honestly, McKinney's fantastic, showed up immediately for them in Brazil last year. Evan Williams has been an awesome young player for them, Swiss Army knife kind of guy. And I think like that middle of the field part of the defense is your strongest portion of the defense. I talked about, hey, the safeties, I like them. The backers, I really like Edgerrin Cooper. And then you can bring that right down to the front, where I like Kenny Clark, although he's a little bit older now. But I think Devontae Wyatt is a beast. I think Devontae Wyatt's going to have a big year. I'm just a big fan of Devontae Wyatt. So the middle of that defense, I think they're closer to where they want to be, right? Quay Walker can be a little bit of a liability in coverage. He's a bigger body. But, I have no problem with what they got going in the middle of the defense. The edges have to play better, right? The edges have to play better. I'm a big Rashawn Gary fan, but he's been up and down. He can be a little up and down. And then Lucas Van Ness has to come on, right? It's time, right? We're patient with young players. It's time. Hey, when I didn't come on for a year and a half, it was time. It took me probably 2 years to figure it out. It's time. And so those guys got to play well. They have to make a jump. Now, I do like Enigbare a lot. I think he's ready to rush with that group on third down, and he did last year. He had some really nice rushes last year. I think he's got more skills than Lucas Van Ness as far as rushing the passer on third down. Now, continuing a conversation about the edges, you got to include the corners in this, and I think the corners are a little bit of a question mark, right? It's probably Hobbs and Nixon, although this can really shake out in a bunch of different ways. Bullard probably in the slot, but he struggled when he sees speed. So rushing coverage, man, Hobbs had some really good football that he played in Vegas with Patrick Graham. He's versatile, but Nixon's probably better suited inside, but he might have to play outside. Yep. So it's just kind of a clusterfuck, respectfully. And I wouldn't say it's to the degree of Minnesota, but I would say it could be an issue at times this year. Not a good division to have problems at corner, right? You look at some of the wide receivers Chicago's got. If things fall right for them. Minnesota, tough deal. Just not what you want to roll out like for a couple of these teams at corner. Like it's not awful, but corner depth shows up every year. It shows up every year in the NFL. So I think I think the Packers, the best version of the Packers might have as high a ceiling as any team in the division. The best version of the Packers. But they're so variable. And Jordan Love's been so variable. So we will see. I just want to say Jeff Hafley has done a really good job with a group that is not overly impressive on paper. It's also year 2 in the Hafley scheme, and people study. So we'll see. All right. Last but not least, certainly not least, because I think this team's going to make a jump. When you look back at what we all saw on Thanksgiving from an end of games standpoint, operations, and of course we're talking about the Chicago Bears, you should know exactly who I'm talking about when I say, where were you on Thanksgiving 2024? Like that day, I tried to watch the game outside because my in-laws were here. That's the day my lawn chair caught on fire. I had my solo stove out there and my laptop and everything. I thought it couldn't get worse than that. But the football version of that happening was the end of game management by Matt Eberflus in that offense. It was just awful. And Shane Waldron was a failed experiment. Golly, for one of the most hyped quarterback prospects in the history of the NFL, when you consider the modern media landscape and the way we jam things down people's throats. Caleb Williams was a hype train, and we knew it wasn't going to happen. Us here, we knew it wasn't going to happen quick. But they so mismanaged his first year. Like, it's almost like they were trying to fuck him over. I know they weren't, but like when you look back at the end of game operations there, when you think about the sequence on the goal line at the end of the Indy game, that was like malpractice. When you think about DJ Moore's bad body language, when you look back at the end of the Commanders game and you have defensive backs mugging up the crowd and the ball snapped and you lose a game on a Hail Mary, that is 7th circle of hell football stuff. I mean, when you really go back and look at last year, they were a factory of sadness. They were a complete factory of sadness. And the part that's so hurtful is like the quarterback has talent. He's talented. I think he's going to be pretty good. And so Chicago had to be a tough place to play last year for anybody on that team, but certainly for a quarterback who shouldered all those expectations, all while taking a beating, just a physical beating. I swear, the more I'm talking about it, I'm like, did somebody lose a bet? Like where they had to like, let's see how much we can fuck this kid's year up. Like give him Shane Waldron. Let's have him be ear hold every week. And I don't know, man. I think it was done honestly, obviously, with good intentions. But the road to HE double hockey sticks is paved with good intentions. And last year seemed like HE double hockey sticks to play football for that team. And so it's time to turn the page. I'm excited to see Caleb Williams play this year. I'm excited to see Ben Johnson and him paired. I don't think there's a more interesting or impactful domino when it comes to a relationship between a player and a coach this year. Especially a young quarterback. Like Ben Johnson was brought in to fix Caleb Williams, to get that thing out of him that we saw from time to time that we know is there. He's already trying to fix his body language. That was something that they wrote about this offseason, that he was like, Caleb, we got to improve our body language. I'm also going to tell DJ Moore too, to be fair. He's trying to speed the clock up, which to me is the number one thing, right? We knew that coming in. That's one of the reasons I thought he'd struggle year one. College football time is not the same as NFL time. You just don't have that kind of time. People are too good, and you have to diagnose things quickly and be decisive. And I thought that stuff showed up. He's also got to get him to hit the gimmies, man. The gimmies, there's so many gimmies that he missed last year, and that was one of the most surprising things that made me think there was a mental component of this thing. Like when it starts snowballing, it's a really hard position to play, and it felt like to me after a while he was overthinking it. He was pressing, and I don't blame him at times. Like I pressed in my career as a high draft pick early in my career, and he missed a lot of these gimmies, and I thought that would be something he'd be better at. Probably as many overthrows on deep balls and underthrows on deep balls as anybody in the league. Like that's one area of the field where I'd really like to see him improve is the outside the number stuff and deep. He started to pick up a little confidence in the middle of their season when they had a couple soft opponents, respectfully. Like they played like Carolina, and he made some really nice throws. And we saw flashes. I loved the way he battled. I loved the way he got up off the turf and picked his teeth up on Monday night when they played down in Houston. That was a fucking beating. And for a guy from the West Coast that everybody's like, yo, he's soft or he's a diva. He cried in college, bro. There was nothing of the sort that I saw in year one. The stuff that I saw that needs to be improved is football stuff. I thought what he said at the podium, the way he conducted himself, sure, we can work on the body language, but it all comes from a place that this guy gives a shit. And we saw flashes. We saw him come back in the Washington game. Like when you're that quarterback, like that should be a signature win in your young career. The Hail Mary is, he got them down the field against Green Bay. There's nothing on the line, and he's playing his ass off. He got him down the field against Green Bay. They missed the damn field goal. He got him within 3 against Minnesota late. Detroit, they're down 16-0 on Thanksgiving, pull close, but they find ways to lose games because they weren't well coached. All right. And so that's the deal. Like when I'm trying to paint a picture of is like a player and a team that's closer than you think. And it is about trying to find out how to win games, like teaching a young player how to win games in crunch time, and a young team teaching them how to win games in crunch time. And that starts with coaching. That I know a coach can fix. And experience. So can't wait to see Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. I also loved his chemistry with Rome Odunze. I liked his work off platform. He threw some beautiful balls rolling right at some points in the season. He scrambled for, I think, almost 400 yards. Like you don't need to be a guy that can tuck it and absolutely kill the defense and go for like 60 yards. You don't need to be Michael Vick or Lamar Jackson or even Josh Allen or one of these guys. Like he's going to hurt a lot of people with his legs over the course of his career because he's a tough tackle and he can pick up the 5 or 6 that money downs necessitate. And especially when you think about playing in this division, like there happen to be some mad scientists in this division. We talked about it, like some guys who like to bring blitz and zero up. And when you blitz him, you better get him down because he can hurt you. When everybody's back's turned, and man, like as rushers, we have to worry about that sort of thing. And I think his skill set matches up nicely if he can learn to have answers for the blitz. And when the answer's not there and he makes somebody miss, I think he's going to break a lot of backs just scrambling. And so there's a lot to like. I mentioned the chemistry with Odunze. I think the chemistry with DJ Moore will only get better. I think part of DJ Moore's frustration last year, it's not just Caleb. And I hate if I, contributed to that because one day I really got after DJ Moore. I was like, bro, if you don't want to be here, don't take a hike. This young quarterback's depending on you. Part of it is just probably playing under Shane Waldron. We can't look at that and say 100% that it's Caleb. I think everything I listed earlier, Caleb's not calling the plays on the goal line at Indy. He's not the one who's letting a Hail Mary fall into somebody's hands in Washington. He's not the one fucking up the clock directly in Detroit. I mean, it's just peak frustration. And if they can just get rid of that and have a competent coaching staff, guys are going to be excited. And so when you get that excitement, the mood starts changing in the building. And that's when you get momentum. I think an interesting question about when you're talking about trying to mirror Detroit, take some pressure off Caleb, run the football, is can Darnell Wright be their Penei Sewell a little bit? I'm not saying he's got to be Penei Sewell good, but like from a skill set standpoint, like he can get out and run and pull in space, get to the second level. He's such a difference maker, Sewell in Detroit. I know they really like Darnell Wright. I like watching him play. I think he's a really solid, big, nasty player. I don't know who their left tackle is, Nolan. Do you?
Not yet. I mean, right now they're still figuring that out. Braxton Jones is the incumbent. They drafted him a few years ago. He's like fifth round
Braxton.
out of Southern Utah. But he just hasn't performed at the level, say, relative to like Darnell Wright has. So they've tried to upgrade there. They took Kieran Amagaji last year to push him. He had some injuries as a rookie. They add Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College in the second round for more competition. And then you got reports yesterday. There's a fellow named Theo Benedict, UDFA from last year. He's actually a Thunderbird from University of British Columbia. He's factoring into the battle too. So that left tackle job still very much up for grabs, where we sit mid-August.
But, and I don't think Braxton Jones is terrible. It's just they want more. Yeah. In my opinion. They just want more. And you could tell by the infusion of talent inside, like Joe Tooney. That's a big signing. Not just from a standpoint of being an upgrade in pass pro and probably in the run game, but like I've sat with Patrick Mahomes, Caleb. Like this is how we get down in Kansas City. Like this is the standard, where Andy Reid's the coach. Like, this is what we do every day. This is what Patrick did when he encountered this. Like I think having a guard like that who's been around, and you talk about Dahlman and Jonah Jackson, like they're veterans, right? Like that helps. When you look at this team he walked onto last year, and here's another thing. Case Keenum, I used to BS with him in the hot tub. We used to get a tub back in the day in Earth City, Missouri, with the Rams. Like that used to be, my dude, Houston's finest. He's now ancient and wise. He was wise back then, but now he's ancient and wise. He's bringing the vibes. He's bringing his knowledge. He's bringing his maturity to the Windy City. And I think honestly, when you go back to last year again and some of the shit that came out that like, hey, they didn't really equip Caleb Williams with the process to watch film, didn't really teach him how to watch it like a pro, right? Like he didn't have people to watch film with. Like that's crazy if that's true, right? And so just to have like Case Keenum in your room is a big upgrade. Last year, if he had a problem and he was like, what do I do? He'd go to Tyson Bagent. Nothing wrong with Tyson Bagent, but like he hadn't been around long enough to know what to do. I'm not taking anything away from some of the guys but when you bring like the future of the franchise in and he's supposed to be like the second coming, that doesn't sound like a good table set for him last year. And a lot of people jumped out of the gym and said they were going to be like the greatest show on turf, man. But I think what we saw as the year went on was scheme wasn't right, protection wasn't right. And at times, frankly, I don't think he had anybody to talk to that he could trust. And so they ran a lot of 12 personnel in Detroit. We love this guy, Loveland. We love Loveland. It's like a love fest, man. He's so athletic. Rookie, Michigan. When I saw him get drafted, I was like watching his highlights, like, damn, this guy's got like a receiver skill set and the catch radius of big guy. And, you can run 12 with him and Kmet. So, listen, I think outside a lot hinges on Luther Burden being, an upstanding citizen and doing the work. There were some comments from Ben Johnson, in the offseason as it pertained to his soft tissue injuries that made him seem less empathetic, which to me meant like maybe he's not showing up in shape. Maybe he's not doing the rehab the way he wants to do. And, it wasn't like a run of the mill, like, hey, we hope he gets out there soon. Like he's doing everything he can. It was like, yeah, I'm a little frustrated. And when you can consider the fact that this very talented wide receiver probably fell to the second because of some personality things, a lot hinges on him being a dynamic 2 or 3. I think he's going to get a chance to be the number 3. I think Rome Odunze slides into that 2 spot with Keenan Allen leaving. It's going to simplify his life a little bit, and we really liked him. And then DJ Moore, who's been up and down over his career, like as far as like some years he's been like a true number 1, and some years you haven't gotten that play out of him. But like, I think the situation is going to be a lot better. And if he can be a bona fide number 1, I think the Lions, the Vikings, the Green Bay Packers, we talked about them. They all have issues at corner. Like if that domino can fall, they fix the passing game here and get these tools to work, right? Because Caleb's got them. They could be better in a hurry. Just take the games that they lost in embarrassing fashion last year, and just be competent in those games at the end of the game. And they're talking about playoffs in November, right? We're still alive, that sort of thing. Wild card, whatever. So just handling business when you're supposed to handle business, and they're going to be on the right track. So I'm hopeful that this offense plays better. We'll see if Ben Johnson. We said, hey Ben, can you bring your offensive line? We'll see what came first, the chicken or the egg. Because I think Caleb's got all the tools. And that's another thing is like you don't necessarily think Ben Johnson's going to do just the same shit. Jared Goff, we called him a top 10 quarterback, and he is, but like he's a relic of the past. Like he's one of the last remaining, as I would call them, like lawn deers, respectfully. Like my dog stands back. You want to talk about brave? You think quarterbacks are brave? How about the ones who can't run, dude? Like, dude, when Jared Goff's got a free runner coming at him, he has no option. He's just going to get blasted. Now you got a guy in Caleb Williams who's toolsy, and one of those tools is he can extend plays and get off platform, and you can move the pocket for him and that sort of thing. We didn't see enough move in the pocket, like by design last year, honestly, I remember in Chicago. So there's a lot of reasons to think, hey, they're going to be better. And there's some reasons that I think Ben Johnson might be really excited right now. Hell, this is the job he took. He turned down jobs for like a year, right? Or two. And now he's like, hey, this is the one. That speaks to some level of confidence that the guy under center is pretty fucking good, and I think he can be. So count me among the people that didn't jump off the bandwagon and nailed the first year analysis. I'll take my sticker at the end of this preview. And the last thing is this. We talk about the defense. I didn't think Flus was bad. I thought Flus is a really good D coordinator, and I'm wishing him the best because he's a heck of a defensive coach. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gotten the job as a head coach. And what happens, and we talk about it all the time, is some of these defensive coaches come back after a failed stint as a head coach, and holy shit, they're pretty good at what they do. So I'm wishing him well. But he wasn't the problem defensively last year. Like the scheme wasn't fucked up. The defense wasn't awful. Like, and I think they must have. I think they upgraded. Then they must feel like they upgraded, honestly. And I say that with all due respect to Flus, but I think Dennis Allen's scheme fits this group. The strength of this group, to me, is having an absolute number one corner in Jalen Johnson, who like he's going to be asked to play more man. They're going to be more aggressive. Dennis Allen's going to get the whole group to play more aggressive schematically. Greg Williams tree. Whenever you watch New Orleans play, they got a little attitude to them. They got big edges. They put a bunch of people in the box. They press. They blitz a lot. And when you blitz a lot, you're going to leave some guys on islands. But when you have a corner like that, and honestly, if you can get Stevenson to play well and consistently, you're going to be able to turn that fucking dial. And if Dennis Allen can start turning that dial and at times can win with 4, that's going to be a big if because, I think while Odangbo, am I saying his Odangbo? Odangbo from Indy, who's a damn good player, who had a really nice year last year. He's a big physical player. If he can stack these years one after the – now we're starting to think like, hey, I got 2 edges who can get home because Montez Sweat can get home. And, Montez Sweat might leave you saying, well, he's not an elite number 1 rusher. Man, there are games where Montez Sweat takes him over and he plays every down. Like he's good in the run game, he's good on third down. And you talk about these big edges, that's what Dennis Allen's used to in New Orleans. You think about some of the body types he's had there, including a guy that we just talked about up in Detroit and Davenport and Cam Jordan and those guys. Like he likes big physical guys. And so if rush and coverage can work together in certain circumstances, and then you turn the dial in certain circumstances, they're going to have a nice little menu to choose from. They also have a pretty good nickel in Kyler Gordon. He's the highest paid slot corner. And Brisker at safety, Byard, who he's up there in years. And honestly, when they signed Byard, I was a little bit confused, but that's who they're rolling out. And I think the secondary is honestly the strength of this defense, as well as the linebacker core is pretty good. Edmonds, Edwards is a hell of a player. Edmonds has got elite physical tools. He's very unique built linebacker. I think it'd be fun. I think Gervin Dexter could take a jump. Yep. I think Gervin Dexter, and it's going to be year 3. Like a lot of times with D linemen, like you see first year they're finding their way, second year, okay, they're figuring some things out. Year 3, they get it going. I think he's going to build on last year, and you're going to like what you see. And I think Grady Jarrett being in the room with him is a great move, because you're going to get the best version of Grady Jarrett. When you switch teams as a veteran and you've been on one team your whole life and people are saying you're washed and yada, 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 you want to come out and like set the world on fire. It's the most hungry you've been. You don't think, as a football player, you don't know you can be any hungrier until it happens. And I think Grady Jarrett, if he can stay healthy, is going to do his very best to have the best year he can. And rushing next to Gervin Dexter is going to be a good look. Shamar Turner from A&M, he provides some depth, some physicality up front in the run game. I see this being a physical, aggressive defense, and I think it's going to go as far as this front takes them, because the secondary is pretty good. The backers are pretty good. If the front can get going, although I don't love the edge depth, look out. So I'm just saying the Bears might be pretty good this year. I haven't picked the division yet. As you know, in these things, I don't pick the division, but you can tell I might not pick the Bears last. This is the type of division that I hate picking, because somebody's going to get picked 4th. And none of these teams, if you drop a lot of these teams in some other divisions, they might win it. Chicago's the question mark, right? But as I've illustrated, if you believe what I'm saying, like, I think there's a lot of reason to believe they're going to be better. And so hold on to your ass. NFC North might be a lot of fun.